Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download at www.audibletrial.com/TNRL. Over 100,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player.
Jesus got out here.
I thought I was a good Christian.
Jesus died on a cross. I go to church every Sunday. Jesus got out here. Then I read this. It says Jesus died on a cross for a rotten hooker.
I thought I was a good Christian.
I go to church every Sunday.
I thought I was a good Christian.
I go to church every Sunday. I am a very religious person.
I thought I was a good Christian. The very lies the serpent told to Eve in the Garden of Eden. Garden of Eden. Garden of Eden. The gospel of Jesus Christ. Spread confusion and promote lies. The gospel of Jesus Christ. Spread confusion and promote lies. The gospel of Jesus Christ. Spread confusion and promote lies. The gospel of Jesus Christ. Spread confusion and promote lies. The gospel of Jesus Christ. Spread confusion and
Hey everybody, it's Ken, This Non-Religious Life, and it is Monday, April 16th, 2012. All the way across the country we have Bob
How's it going?
and Jason.
Hey, what's up?
And got a few interesting things to talk about today.
It's about time.
We have about time. Not much in the way of comments to talk about, except for one I like that was really just talking about when I mentioned Fable.
Yeah.
I was reading that comment and I was like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? And I was like, oh, he's talking about Fable.
What was
Right,
the comment?
He says, I agree, but if you play good, it costs a lot because you have to pay out and keep promises. But if you're like me, you have a friend playing the evil guy and gives you lots and lots of money. Haha. It's true. Playing evil is so much easier. And you make so much money because you just steal and take whatever you want. And
I want to take a moment to reintroduce everybody. So I want to start with Bob. Bob is now the bearded guy.
oh, yeah.
Ken is the skinny guy.
Still.
He's always been the skinny
Yeah.
guy.
And I am the silent guy who's embarrassed of both of you.
Thank you, Dan Porter.
Yeah. Or that random guy. That whatever guy.
I guess, but you know what? I guess I should be okay with the bearded guy because I think that's better than the fat guy.
That guy. Yeah. I didn't read the blog that he wrote. He was, to all our listeners, he came back and decided to try and rebut us again. But from what I got from Bob, it's really just a bunch of, BS name calling and just generally him being an asshat. So.
Well, look, I think it's one of those things like he might be a lovely person. He may be the kindest, most gracious man on the planet, but he doesn't have anything good to say about us. and I think that I was. Did you have you guys listened to any of the most recent CFI podcasts with Chris Mooney? The stuff about motivated reasoning or how the conservative and liberal brains work. And,
no, I haven't.
And, like thinking about it in that light, Dan Porter is clearly engaged in motivated reasoning, and now we've got him so spun up that he's resorted to name calling and ridiculing us. And I haven't seen him present like, and it's not like we're bashing him personally, but because he has a horse in this race, whether the Shroud of Turin is real or not, he takes it very personally. And because of his personal involvement and his stake in the claim, it becomes a personal issue to him.
Yeah, it's sad to see because he's passionate about the issue. He wants to discuss it, but it seems like once anyone tries to argue against him, it just devolves into name calling and him getting really, like emotionally upset about it. And it said, like, I've been involved in a debate about the historicity of Jesus for the past like 2 weeks now. Just a back and forth between myself and some other person.
I'd hope it'd be another person. 'Cause that'd
Yeah,
just be
yeah.
weird.
Yeah.
Just
And
you
it
and
hasn't
your-
once devolved into name calling. It's definitely gone to the insinuation that the other person has no idea what they're talking about. But hasn't been any, just blatant insulting or anything like that. So it's sad to see. I wouldn't mind, having him come on the show, but it's obviously he's not going to do that.
Well,
likes to,
he's publicly said on his site that he's not going to challenge us in our venue. He won't come on the show.
Of course not. Of course not. Absolutely not. Because then he has to think on his feet and, rebut claims as they come up rather than sitting behind his blog and sort of not giving us a second say in anything he says.
Well, I'm not looking for a venue where I can, I don't know, shout my beliefs from the rooftops. I wanted to examine the evidence. I wanted to talk about the credibility of people like, who's the pollen guy? Was that Max Fry? And I wanted to talk about the credibility, of the guy from the Italian university with the most recent paper. What's his name? Fanti. I wanted to talk about how his beliefs may have leaked over into his science. And I wanted to talk about how these guys were starting from the conclusion and working backwards, and how these guys were approaching it from a standpoint of personal incredulity. I mean, even that Shroud challenge says, prove to me it can't be real. That's the stupidest, most asinine challenge ever. Prove to me that I'm not a psychic.
Yeah. It's, prove to me I can't fly, or any number of things. You can't. That's not how science works.
Yeah, and I just if you're gonna start name calling and resorting to ad hominem attacks when really all I'm doing is being critical of the evidence, then whatever, I can take it.
Yeah.
Now, I hope that I was thinking about that, and I hope that I don't ever come across as like that attitude, like, oh, this guy believes this, what an idiot. I understand, like, people's beliefs don't make them bad people or idiots. I'm sure Dan Porter's a very smart guy, but he seems to be engaging in motivated reasoning, and he's letting his personal beliefs steer his thinking.
Yeah. He's definitely starting with the preconceived notion that the Shroud's real, and then trying to either poke holes in evidence against it, blatantly make things up, or sort of reason away any evidence that he can find. For him, it's I can't explain this, therefore God.
Right, that's just an argument from personal incredulity.
Yeah. And it's not how the world works, Maybe 1,000 years ago, but not in the 21st century.
I was having I had dinner last night with our resident theologian Matt, and I was talking with him about this, and he asked me a very good question, because we were talking about about how you can't start with the conclusion and work backwards from that. You have to follow the evidence wherever it leads, and he asked me if a degree of presupposition exists in science. Like you could be the best researcher out there doing the best work you can. How much does your biases and presuppositions creep into your work? And he asked if that happens, and I was like, absolutely, that happens. And science knows that it happens. That's why the whole scientific process is a huge meat grinder of ideas, and it's very unkind. And it's that system that weeds out the bias in people's research. If you're doing research and your personal biases creep in, they're going to get exposed, and those ideas will be rejected. And that's why we have medical clinical trials that are double-blind, placebo-controlled. If they're not double-blind, placebo-controlled, and randomized in all the right ways, then they're worthless.
Yeah. I mean, the entire peer review process is the same way. You have a claim, it better hold up. And when other scholars go to look at it, they better be able to replicate what your study was, and they better come up with the same results. And if they don't, then it's garbage. It's like do you remember all the whole hubbub that was like years and years ago about like the cold fusion, and no one could replicate it, and so it was discarded. It was like, this is crap. This is a hoax.
And actually that story of cold fusion, the two guys were Pons and Fleischmann, and they're a good example of somebody not following that scientific process of peer review and duplication. They got their answer, the answer that they wanted, and then without holding it up for peer review, they went public with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so then, of course, the news cycle started running with it, and then it turned out that they massaged the numbers.
Yeah.
And now they're not in science anymore.
Yeah.
So,
the whole vaccine scandal. Vaccines cause autism. The second that was, and what sucks is that study snuck into an actual journal.
They've since recanted it. Like
recanted it.
The journal was the Lancet, which is an English journal of medical journal.
It's the most preeminent medical journal there is.
And they've booted that article, and the guy was Andrew Wakefield, and he proposed the MMR vaccine linked to autism, which has been completely shot down now. But people wanted it to be true so badly that it was run with.
Mm-hmm.
And man, you talk about somebody that had a dog in the race. Wakefield had a vested interest in making the current MMR vaccine unfavorable because he had a patent in the wings for his own version of the MMR vaccine, and if his vaccine was used instead of the current vaccine, he stood to make millions.
Oh yeah. I mean, it doesn't hurt that there were a lot of parents of autistic children who were, funding to have a link so that they had someone to sue too. I guess there's a noticeable paper trail in England that links groups of parents to the research itself, which is shady.
And his research methods themselves were weird. Like there was something about him taking blood samples from little kids at his son or daughter's like 5-year-old birthday party or something weird like that. Yeah, it's really weird stuff. He was not operating in an ethical manner.
No. But
But think of that one paper, all of the irreparable harm that did.
I know. I still see people like on my Facebook posting stuff like that. It's like 6,000% increase in autism since the year the MMR vaccine was released.
Well, that's the purpose of it all. I mean, companies do it against other companies all the time. It's like once you put it out there, you can retract it, but it never goes away, and that's the way the rumors build and all these stories get attached to it, and it destroys things.
It's like the movie Inception.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Which you love.
I love that movie too. But it's once it's out there for good. One thing you can't take back is an idea once it's been tossed out there, because there'll always be people gullible enough to believe it. People who are not into doing the research themselves and finding out that, hey, this isn't true. And there'll always be the people out there who have the motivated reasoning to want it to be true. And I mean, that takes us back to Dan Porter, who, he wants the Shroud to be true so bad that he can't allow anyone with a dissenting opinion to, exist.
Truth be told, I kind of want it to be true too. I mean, that would be really incredible. That would be some instance of I don't know, some clear evidence of some super paranormal activity that we just would not be able to understand. But it turns out there's lots of aspects of it we do understand, and we pretty much can replicate it. And just because we can explain it doesn't mean that we never will. So personal incredulity aside, I want something. I want Bigfoot to be true, and I'd love it if the Loch Ness Monster was real too. But those things aren't, and I think it's that measure about like, yeah, sure, I'm open-minded, but not so open-minded that my brain falls out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, open-mindedness is definitely one thing. I like to consider myself open-minded. I read books and articles by people who have opinions vastly different from my own. But that's how you sift out bad ideas, You let new information in, you critically judge it, and if it doesn't hold up, you expel it. Whereas if your mind is completely open, crap gets in, but good stuff can get out too, so it just sort of fills with, vacuous ideas.
Yeah, well, I like to think that in this whole Shroud of Turin debate that we're fine. If he wants to call us names, then that's great. He can do that, and he can engage in the ad hominem attacks. I still maintain all I'm doing is being critical of the evidence, such as it is.
And that's science.
Yeah.
Like, there's not a single scientific principle that stands today that hasn't been rigorously, way more rigorously than we're examining it, pulled apart and had every little tiny piece examined and scrutinized, and then put back together, and then dismantled again. How many years after Galileo, we're still doing the same thing? How many years after Newton, we're still doing the same thing with his ideas?
Yeah, that's not to say that some ideas that we have now, like some scientific truths that we have now, weren't considered radical fringe ideas when they were started. Like, for instance, something we take for absolutely granted is something very simple like Ohm's law. That was considered to be, they were like, no, this guy's crazy. That Ohm's law, that's nuts. Because at that time they believed in they called it the ether. And it was thought that, even though you're in a vacuum, you could propagate electrical signals along a vacuum. They said, well, there must be this other medium called the ether, so they had all this math worked out to move through the ether. And then like Ohm and who was another guy? He's like the father of electromagnetism. He did all the Moore's laws. Ohm and Moore came along, and they were like, no, you don't need anything. And they were considered to be crazy people. They were the fringe guys. But very quickly, in their lifetimes, it was realized that they're not the fringe. Everybody needs to start thinking along the lines that they had laid out. And with regards to the Shroud, that hasn't happened yet. It's still in fact, the progress on the Shroud thinking, I think, has gone the other way. It's become more of a debunked mystery and less of a realigning of thought.
Yeah.
Man, and this has been going on for how many hundreds of years?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, since the Middle Ages when it appears, it only started to get scrutinized in the 20th century. So.
Yeah, that's. I would think that with the state of science and progress today, that since they started doing the scientific analysis of the Shroud 30 years ago, that if there really was some there, then we would have seen the realigning of the thinking, but instead it goes the other way.
Yeah. It really it's like a series of walls. Like they build up walls, and like once you get past one, it's like, well, this, just moving the goalpost is what it is.
Yeah.
Every time there's new evidence that's debunked about the Shroud, the goalpost is moved. Because at first it was, well, you can't explain this. And then if someone does, it's like, well, move the goalpost, you can't explain this. And when it is, they move the goalpost again, well, you can't explain this. So,
isn't that the basics? Isn't that the basic foundation of like research? It's like you see, you have this thing, you want to know how it works, so you figure it out, and then when you say, well, it doesn't work that way, you move that object to a different area and try to find out.
Sure, but so long as your supposition changes as well as the goal.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is like that's the foundation of doing research on something, and it's just somewhere with. I guess it goes back to the belief seeping over more than actual research of your personal beliefs.
In actual research, as new evidence would come to light, the suppositions about it would change. Whereas this, it's the believers say, well, you can't explain this aspect, therefore God. When someone explains it away, they move the goalpost back and say, well, you can't explain this, therefore God. And when that's explained away, they move the goalpost back again. You can't explain this, therefore God. It's no different than young Earth creationists arguing against evolution. It's like, well, you don't have transitional species, therefore God. It's like, well, okay, we do have a transitional species. Oh yeah, well, you can't explain how life comes from non-matter or non-organic matter, therefore God. It's like, well, we have the theory of abiogenesis. So we can explain that. We've seen how nucleotides arise out of, random chemicals. Okay, well, you can't explain the rise of certain species, therefore God. You can't explain the origin of the universe, therefore God. You're like, the supposition never changes. It's always, therefore God.
Yeah, and any argument that's made from that stance of we were calling personal incredulity, you can't explain it. That's no argument at all. That's not any argument to make your case. That provides you no footing whatsoever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's true. It's true. There's nothing much to say other than yeah. If that's reasoning, then you could do that with anything. I lost a pair of socks the other day. Therefore, underwear gnomes. Prove they don't exist.
Well, I can prove that they don't exist just in your statement. You lost socks, so the underwear gnomes would not take them. It would be the same.
You wear socks underneath shoes. Therefore, socks are underwear.
Anyway,
sock out of
do you want to talk about that meme that I sent you?
The image? Yeah. Let's talk about that. Yeah.
Well, I want to give you a little backstory about this. This was sort of, I saw this on somebody's Facebook feed, and it's a person who is a believer, and they have admittedly poor math skills, and a poor understanding of math. And their comment where this was posted on their thing, they said like, "Oh, I've been blinded with science or math, as the case may be," and I looked at this and I was like, yeah. I think one, it's an instance of nobody was dazzled by brilliance. I think they were baffled by bullshit. And two, really when you break this down, and I guess maybe we'll have to, I guess I'd like to post it in the show somehow.
Why don't you just describe it?
It's just
just read it. It's an image and it's just a lot of text. So
basically what they're saying is, the question is, it says, does God exist? And then they start doing some math hand waving where they're saying like, they're defining God as X, and then I have
it pulled up. I can actually read it. It says, does God exist? Only a meaningful sentence can be true. In a meaningful sentence, every constituent of the sentence must be meaningful. So if a singular term is meaningful, then it denotes something. If the singular term X equals God, then the singular term X denotes something. Therefore, the assumption that X does not exist is false. According to mathematics, philosophy, and even the common sense paradigm, one must first assume the existence of something in order to deny its existence. Even if God is defined by the square root of -1, which results in the imaginary unit exists within the imagination. If the imagination exists for any unit to be imagined, then the square root of -1 exists by way of denoting something, even if imagined. So, if the above premise is correct, it is possible that God does not exist is true. Either God denotes something, in which case God does not exist is false, or God does not denote anything, in which case God does not exist is not even meaningful, let alone true. So whether an individual accepts or denies the existence of something does not realize or falsify its existence. The individual's opinion is based on perception and perspective, not facts and evidence. This results in an ontological argument. The mistake of an ontological argument is that to have the argument at all parties involved have already treated the subject as an existing real predicate. Real predicate is capitalized and in quotation marks. God equals X, X equals the square root of -1, square root of -1 equals imaginary. It's I in parentheses, denote something which means its value is true, hereby making X exist. Now, this is garbage. This is someone who took half a year of intro philosophy and were probably stoned the entire way through it. You know, like
well,
that's what this is.
This is just like the schoolyard, the elementary thing that we did when I was a kid. It's like in the dictionary, the definition of nothing is something that doesn't exist. But how can it be nothing if it was something? You know, stupid elementary fucking wordplay.
Well, I mean, for us to talk about God, we all agree that the concept of God exists.
Yeah, that does not mean
and I think that's
God
the ontological statement. That we're all agreeing that we're talking about an idea. But that doesn't necessarily mean the idea is true, but the man in the sky that the idea is representative of may not be true.
Exactly. Just because you can, and that's the square root of -1 is an imaginary unit. But for the sake of mathematics, you can discuss it like it is a real thing. Well, it doesn't mean it actually is a real thing.
I also have a problem with that statement too, because they said that where they say the square root of -1, which results in an imaginary unit, and an imaginary unit exists within the imagination. That's not true. Square root of -1 is a number. It is a complex number that it's on the complex plane, and the complex plane is just perpendicular to the real plane. In fact, when those guys were discovering all of these electrical properties, they had to invent another number plane that was perpendicular to our own to satisfy the mathematics. And so it's a real number. It's just it's on a number line perpendicular to the number line we normally associate. It's not imaginary at all. And in fact, the term imaginary came from a paper by the philosopher René Descartes. Is that how you say his name?
René Descartes.
He coined the term imaginary, and it just stuck. Because at the time when these guys were doing this stuff about the, sort of doing away with the ether, a lot of people thought that this new math, this complex number math, was unnecessary, and so he used the term imaginary in a derogatory way. He was being dismissive of the math, and then the name just stuck.
Like Big Bang Theory.
Yeah,
that's where that term comes from too. It was a derogatory term.
But so it's not imaginary at all. It's still a number. It still has use. It's not like I just made this up out of whole cloth. I can draw it on a number line. I can represent it graphically.
Just like God.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. This is it really is a lot of hand waving with using big terms and sort of like most people are bad at math. There was a study done a number of years ago that shows that humans in general have very poor skills with math and actually have a hard time conceptualizing anything more than I think it was like 5 or 6 of anything. And so the square root of -1, you throw that out there, most people are gonna be like, "What the what?"
Well, that was
roots.
another aspect of this meme that was floating around. I was like, it occurred to me when everybody was like, I was involved in the discussion thread, and it was like, it's 2:00 in the morning. I'm typing on my computer because somebody on the internet is wrong. Was that one of those things?
Like me.
And I started seeing this common thread in all of the comments in the discussion, and people were always like, they were sort of arguing the semantics of it, but then they would always say like, "Well, I was never really good at math," or "I never understood math," or "I don't understand this imaginary number concept." And then it occurred to me that like, I think this person's whole argument is predicated on somebody not understanding the math. They assumed correctly that you would not understand a very simple math concept. So what does that say about them and their opinion of you, and what does that say about you and your own thought processes?
God is real.
You're just embarrassed for us both.
I'm totally. I can, don't show me. No, turn off the camera.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Whenever anyone has to resort to what's called here the common sense paradigm, a big heaping pile of bullshit is coming. Like according to math and philosophy and even common sense, it's like, whoa, slow down there. If the math and philosophy are correct, we're not going to need the common sense, which is not so common anyway. But the whole thing is just crap. Like discussing, it's exactly what we were talking about. Discussing a concept and admitting that the concept exists is different than admitting that the concept is true, or that the object contained within the concept is real. It just means that we can discuss this idea because this idea is an idea.
Yeah, well, I think what this meme really shows is you're gonna see it bounce around. It's probably gonna show up on every religious person's Facebook feed, and really all you're gonna do is it's gonna be a way for you to determine. You're gonna be able to say 2 things about that person. And 1, they're bad at math, and 2, they don't think things through.
Yeah, definitely both. So I think we can leave that be now. Let's talk about.
Wait.
No, what? Isn't it halfway?
It is.
Oh.
And I think Bob has something to say because there's something that uses a lot of math, and that's magic.
Yeah.
And there's one man that you want to talk about his book that does a lot of magic.
Yeah. So our Audible pick for the week, we decided it was going to be the atheist book by Penn Jillette, God No.
Which I've read the book. I am not a
You listened to it on Audible.
Yes. I'm not a fan of Penn Jillette. I've just never really gotten into his sense of humor or anything. But I did really enjoy this book because, there's one thing you have to give him credit for. He is a showman. He knows how to entertain. He knows how to, that's his life. He just entertains. And in his writings and his stories, it's really fascinating. It really draws you in. So this is definitely a great audiobook to pick up, even if you don't like him like I do.
I do like him, but I disagree with him about some issues because he's a strict libertarian, and but he does have. I do think he makes good arguments about atheism and why he doesn't believe.
Yeah. So if you want to pick up that, you go to audibletrial.com/TRNL and you pick it up. But I listened to his podcast too. Sunday school.
Yeah. Did you listen to the most recent one?
The last one I listened to was when he had Gilbert Godfrey on there.
His most
that show was a horrible episode.
Yeah, I don't really care for Godfrey. Although I do think it was unfair that Godfrey got he was fired as the Aflac duck because he made a Japanese a joke about the Japanese tsunami, which I agree is in bad taste, but he's a comedian. And I'm not saying that he it's like somebody that goes to the comedy show and walks out offended.
Yeah.
I just don't I think that was maybe.
Well, they didn't just fire him from doing the Affleck duck. They fired him and hired somebody to do his voice.
Yeah.
So they still have, I guess the notoriety of his voice, but not. But anyway, yeah, definitely go check out the book. It's actually a really good listen and read. And that's at audibletrial.com/TRNL.
TNRL.
Did I say it wrong?
Yeah.
Nope. I always say it wrong. This non-religious life, it stands for that. It's just take the first letter of each.
I think you spell it TRNL because I think you're thinking like Tron.
Maybe. Or actually, it's trap, release, neuter, and...
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right.
Moving along.
So, how about all of the politics going on in the religious right now?
There's
how
politics?
every single person so far in the campaign for the Republican nomination who has stated that they were called to, run because God told them to, has now been defeated by a man who believes that God lives on a planet called Kolob. Mitt Romney is still in the race.
I've been listening to and reading as much about Mormonism as I can find, and
it's pretty awesome. You're going to convert, aren't you?
And I'm really fascinated with Mormonism. But so in the early '60s, Freedom from Religion is running. I'm like getting all over the place here. The Freedom from Religion Foundation is running a television ad now that shows a speech given by John F. Kennedy in his run-up to the presidency, and I forget who it's to, but it has him speaking very plainly, and he's saying that he supports the separation of church and state, that separation is absolute. And apparently when he gave that speech and made that statement about the Establishment Clause, it was very important because he was the first candidate who was Catholic. And so the fear was that if he were to be in the presidency, that he, as a Catholic, he would be beholden to the Pope, right? And so Kennedy made it very clear that he would not. He was all about separation of church and state, and then his job was president to the people first, and then a Catholic citizen second. And so, the Pope was not going to influence his policy. And so that was very interesting, and I think it's important that he said that, and it's good that he said that. I mean, geez, you wouldn't want the other. But here's the thing about Romney. Romney is a Mormon. When the Mormons are, as I understand it, I could be wrong about this, but when the Mormons are, I don't know, when they're wed or married or something, baptized or something, they make a solemn vow. They make a solemn vow in the Mormon Church that they will put the interests of the church above all things, including themselves, their personal wealth, their family. The church is first among all things, and Mormons swear to this.
I mean, but it's been obvious that he's doing that in his campaign. I mean, of all the campaign issues that are coming up that are backfiring on him, like banning porn, women issues and all that. I mean, it's obvious that he's doing that. And I hear people all the time say, no, he's not going to do that if he gets into office. And it's obvious right now on his campaign trail that he's doing it. And it's just, I don't know. So
if he were to get elected president, which I don't think he will, but even just as a candidate, you have to speculate about it, that if he's in the presidency, the Mormon Church is also in the Oval Office.
It's going to be weird.
Yeah.
And he makes a vow to do so.
Yeah.
And so I guess the question people should be asking is how seriously does he take that promise? And how much influence will the Mormon Church have in the Oval Office?
A lot. I mean, he's already showing it.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I lived in Massachusetts at the time when he was the governor, and he wasn't terrible. I think we've had worse, in fact, but he's a lot of talk on the road. If he's going to be anything like he was when he was governor, he's a lot of talk on the road, and then the second he is in the position of power, he sways like that to any sort of like public outcry. He doesn't like being not liked.
You know what? George Bush was governor of Texas, and he didn't do shit when he was governor of Texas, but when he became president, a lot of shit happened.
Well, I would argue that he didn't do a lot of shit when he was president either.
Well, but
the problem
our
is
civil liberties took a big hit.
Like Dick Cheney in the vice president chair. You know, sit Bush down in front of a baseball game and then go make the big decisions. Yeah. The Bush regime had no qualms about being not liked, though.
They were okay with it.
Yeah, they were pretty all right with it. In fact, I'm pretty sure that the pure hatred directed at Dick Cheney actually fueled him to live longer. You know, like he ate it. Like he was some horrible demon from the pits of hell who just survived on pure
No, I think the medical industry is what kept him alive, because how many bypasses and
he definitely is mostly metal now.
Heart transplant, all that shit.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, if pure spite keeps a man alive, then Cheney will be around for some time. I'm not as scared of Mitt Romney in the president's chair as I would be of Santorum. You know? So the fact that Santorum left, which actually brings me back to Jason. You might remember you sent this to me and Bob a week ago now, when Santorum for his Easter Mass, he said,
oh, yeah. That was a scary statement.
Can you believe that sermon today? I guess I never quite realized how liberal Jesus really was.
Oh, yeah.
He was all about giving handouts to people who didn't deserve it. He should have realized that if he gave those people a little tough love, they could have gotten through those hardships on their own. I'm feeling torn between my faith and my beliefs. I can either stand by and support this apparent socialism taught in the Bible, or I can show the nation that I can be their real savior. I really have some soul searching to do. Now, this is right before he dropped out of the race.
Yeah, so there's bigger plans.
Probably because that is the biggest blasphemy I've ever heard in my entire life. Awesome.
No,
awesome.
What he's doing, he said that. Now he's dropping out. He's going to team up with Rick Perry, and they're going to do some big event together.
Awesome.
Talk about, I mean, now, like, not only have those guys, like, hijacked U.S. history, and they've hijacked religion, but now they've hijacked the Bible itself. I mean,
awesome.
And now, you know, like, next thing they're gonna start doing the things like, it's exactly what you were talking about, Ken. Like, well, Jesus didn't actually say this, but he should have.
Yeah, he should have. Jesus didn't really mean to be a socialist. If he had known better, your theology states that he's omnipotent. How, like, what he did was the best thing, like, according to your own damn religion. Like, you know, what are you talking about? He should have known better.
Yeah,
like,
Jesus is an example to be followed, except when he's giving out money and food to the poor. Then I'm not behind that at all.
Yeah,
that Jesus guy had it all wrong.
Yeah.
Oh,
he was influenced by the commies.
Yeah,
the commies.
You know, that's like and you know, a lot of people, and I think even you did, Jason, were sort of comparing it to the John Lennon statement about, like, I'm bigger than Jesus now, right? But
it's like, you can't say that.
That's the equivalent of Rick Perry. Like I don't know what, or not Rick Perry. Santorum saying, "I'm better than Jesus now."
I can do a better
He
job.
is saying he's better than Jesus. He's like, I am absolutely more awesome than Jesus.
He said, I can outsource Jesus' work, and we can do this a better.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
He's
that
got
is a
some
pretty
good
crazy
ideas,
statement.
but if we had small Chinese hands producing salvation for 5 cents a piece, we could then sell it for a profit.
It sounds like a bargain.
I do think it's funny that and you're absolutely right when you made the observation about all of the candidates that said that they were called by God are now out of the race.
Yeah.
Is Newt out? Newt's still in.
Is Newt Gingrich? Maybe.
I think Newt is still in.
Newt's still in
Gingrich.
And he also did an event down in Florida that was parallel to Rick Perry's Texas event.
Yeah, you're right.
And they created DVDs to send out to everybody's homes. I haven't gotten one yet.
Newt's been awful quiet lately.
Well, no, he's been saying stuff. He said he gave a speech a couple nights ago. I haven't watched it yet because I was busy, but I plan on watching it this week. But.
I like Newt Gingrich. Marriage is a sacred pact between one man and 4 women, 4 different times.
Yeah. But only one at a time. So long as or 2 at a time.
Yeah, 2 at a time because that's the reason his last one failed because he got busted with somebody else.
Yeah. Who he then married.
The nanny, wasn't it? No, I don't know.
Man,
these guys.
Newt Gingrich makes me.
I still maintain that the Republican Party does not want to win.
Well, the scary thing is we've watched this progressively get crazier and crazier every year. Sure. When Bush was running for president, we were like, "What the fuck," And there was those jokes and no effects, and all the little punk rockers did their little campaign. But if it was crazy that first year, this time it's super crazy. Imagine what next election season is going to be. It's
next election will be nuts because it'll be a Democrat and a Republican, and there won't be an incumbent.
Yeah, and it's going to be insane.
It will be insane. I think it's interesting that thinking about Kennedy, 50 years ago, it was important for a candidate. It was an issue for a candidate to express his support for the separation clause. Right? That was a big campaign issue. He had to demonstrate that he was not going to let faith in the church interfere with his policies. Now, 50 years later, as a candidate, they have to talk all about their faith and talk about how their faith informs everything they do.
Yeah.
Where have we gone wrong?
Twilight Zone.
Sometimes it feels like Twilight Zone. It really does. Yeah. Jason, I wanted to bring one last thing before we go. You sent an email saying, read the comments. What were you talking about?
I don't have it in front. Let me see if I can pull up my tablet. I don't have it in front of me.
It was on the 700 Club.
Yeah, I remember that.
I
won't be able to read it word for word because I don't have it in front of me. But the first comment on that page on the Christian Broadcasting 700 Club page was about an individual who fell down the stairs. I mean, the story is horrible. The person fell down the stairs, suffered injuries where half of their body was numb. They couldn't feel their face. They couldn't feel their arms and stuff. And they were pretty much not able to get up and move around and walk. So he or she, I can't remember, sent money and a prayer request to the 700 Club. And Pat Robertson read it on air, and they were so excited and felt the power of God that they jumped up and said hallelujah, and they were healed because of the prayer request. I just thought that was funny. I mean, he or she goes into great detail on the comment post, and that's what I wanted you to read.
Yeah, I see it now. It's right here. This is the last one.
Yeah, I was just
confused because I was like, "There's 35 pages of comments here."
Yeah.
But they were all really good.
Yeah, some of them are pretty good. Some of them are definitely pretty good.
Yeah, whatever you wanted me to see was buried in 35 pages of comments that I didn't.
Well, I thought y'all would enjoy it. That's why I didn't highlight anything.
I love the little links. I've never been to the 700 Club site. This is excellent. I like the little buttons on the side. Giving your life to Jesus. Are you ready to take the next step? What? Get married? Like what is this?
You gotta get married.
Going steady with Jesus.
Second base.
And then right next to it,
I got to second base with Jesus.
Not yet ready to.
We need to make shirts.
Get answers to your questions. Let's see.
I did always like the Jesus is my homeboy shirts. I thought those were funny. But that would be funny. I got to second base with Jesus.
You're going to hell. I mean, God.
Yeah, well, bags are packed.
I was going to make a joke about putting the body of Christ in your mouth, but I won't.
I think you just did.
Yeah. Yeah, Jason, you're awful talky today, man. You're not the silent guy. Why?
I'm still embarrassed of you.
For being the silent guy, you're awful verbose today.
Well, you know, I've had a lot of alcohol.
Yeah.
It's 12 o'clock.
Jason's drunk.
Just kidding. So does that?
Yeah, I guess that's it.
Did it take us out?
Where are we on time? Or is that about it?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, cool. Well, all right. That's the show. We went through a bunch of things today. You know, Dan Porter's scathing rebuttal of us, and by rebuttal I mean calling us names. Touch on motivating reasoning in the Shroud, aspects of science. We discussed that stupid meme that's floating around. How a Mormon has now defeated every single one of the, or just about all of the religious candidates who are running for president on the Republican ticket, which makes me think of South Park when everyone ends up in hell and they're like, wait, who was right? And then up in heaven, it's just a bunch of Mormons.
Yeah.
Well, we know that's wrong because there's no heaven for Mormons.
The Mormons. Yeah. And Jason sending us a comment that wasn't actually that funny. Just kidding.
I will kill you.
But if you have anything you want us to discuss on the show, you think we're wrong, you can always write a blog scathing.
And just call us names.
Guy, you know, fat guy, bearded guy,
embarrassed
silent guy, embarrassed guy, whatever. Or you could leave us a voicemail, 757. I don't know what number I was about to spit out. 757.
Somebody's going to go, what?
2195. You can shoot us an email at nonreligious@zombie-popcorn.com. Yeah, please don't shoot us. Shoot us. You can like us on Facebook, facebook.com/thisnonreligiouslife. You can put us in your circles on Google+.
Oh, yeah,
you can go, everything's on the website, zombie-popcorn.com. Sign up for the newsletter. You'll get an email once a week just telling you about all the great shows that we put together. Jason puts a lot of work into it. It's a good read. So with all that, you know what? No, Stitcher Radio. Stitcher, you can listen to all the shows there. And iTunes, you can go rate the shows, download every episode, listen to it on your iPod. So that is it.
Nope, it's not it. You can support the show by going to audibletrial.com/TNRL. Get a free audio book download and free 30-day trial, and you support this show. Thanks.
All right. So that's it. There's too much stuff to cover. Good night.
Good job, everybody.
I thought I was a good Christian.
Jesus died on a cross. I go to church every Sunday. This got out here. Then I read that Jesus died on a cross for a rotten hooker.
I thought I was a good Christian.
I go to church every Sunday.
I thought I was a good Christian.
I go to church every Sunday. I'm a very religious person.
I thought I was a good Christian. The very lies the serpent told to Eve in the Garden of Eden. Garden of Eden. Garden of Eden. The gospel of Jesus Christ. Spreads confusion and promotes lies. The gospel of Jesus Christ. Spreads confusion and promotes lies. The gospel of Jesus Christ. Spreads confusion and promotes lies. The gospel of